Hi, we are Team 54. Today we want to talk about the air traffic trends. The US airline and traffic data datasets published by YY Xian Kagos offers a detailed monthly record of commercial air traffic in the United States from 2003 through 2023. Sources from the U.S. Bureau of Transportation Statistics. The dataset includes key industries metrics such as the number of passenger flights, revenue passengers miles, available seats miles, load factor, and cancellation rates. So now I'll be walking you through two key evaluations that together explore the long-term growth of the U.S. airline industry. The first chart, which shows the total number of the airline passengers in the U.S. from 2003 to 2023. As we can see, passenger volume experienced continuous growth for the over 15 years, peaking at more than 926 million in 2019. Then in 2020, we can see the sudden and massive drop of nearly 60% of the direct impact of the COVID-19 travel restrictions and public health concerns. A strong recovery followed, which 2023 figure climbing back to over 850 millions, approaching pre-pandemic levels. This chart captures both the industry's rise and the lasting impact of the global disruption. So the second chart, which compares domestic and international passenger trends. Before the pandemic, both segments showed healthy growth, but after 2020, their paths diverged. Domestic travel, which had a smaller decline, rebounded more quickly and nearly returned to 2019 levels by 2023. International travel, however, experienced a deeper fall and has yet to fully recover. This contrasts reverse an important insight. Domestic demand has been the primary drivers of post-pandemic recovery, while international travel still lags behind, like due to stricter border controls, visa issue, and traveler hesitation.
July and August consistently show the darkest squares, meaning these are the peak months is for air travel, likely due to the summer vacation and school holidays. In contrast, January and February are the lightest, which suggests a lower travel demand after the holiday season. This visualization helps us spot the abnormal years, and for example, 2020 clearly stands out with a significant lighter shades across all months, indicating the sharp decline in the travel during the COVID-19. And let's take a look at our second chart, the line chart. Um, this graph shows the average number of air passengers for each month aggregated across 21 years. This smoothes out year-specific disruptions and highlights the general seasonal patterns over time. Again, we see that July is consistently the busiest month with a average of over 71 million passengers, followed by June and August. On the other hand, February is the lowest, average around 53 million. This confirms that air travel demand naturally fluctuates across the year. So these two graphs gives us both a macro view and a macro view, making the seasonal pattern in air travel very clear. This insight is crucial for the airlines, airports, and the um, tourism agencies to allocate resources efficiently, adjust pricing strategies, and focus passengers flow for more accurately. And let's now compare the domestic and international air travel side by side. Looking at both passenger volume, revenue passenger miles, which represent the number of paying passengers multiplied by the distance traveled. Starting with the domestic chart, we see that average monthly passengers number and revenue both peak in January and August. This reinforces our earlier finding that the summer is the busiest travel season. What's interesting here is that revenue line closely tracks the passenger line, suggests that domestic flights have relatively stable average distances. Now moving to the international chart, the total number of passengers is much lower than the domestic, but the revenue passenger miles are significantly higher. This makes sense because the international flights tend to cover longer distances. We also see the sharper rises in the revenue line during the summer months, meaning that international airlines earn much more per traveler during the peak season. So while both segments follow the similar seasonal rhythms, international travel shows more pronounced variation in both passengers and count and revenue, which could impact airline planning and pricing strategies. And let me um, pass to my teammates to talk about another part.
This measures the capacity of an airline. So in summary, these data, these metrics peak in 2019 for both domestic and international flights. However, there is a significant drop in 2020 because of COVID. Over 40% drop for domestic flights, over 65% drop for international flights. However, strongly recovered after 2021, over 40% recovery for domestic flight and over 54% recovery for international flight. Overall, ASM recover quickly after COVID. Next, I'm going to introduce the revenue passenger miles metrics. This measures the passenger demand for flight. So it also peaked in 2019 over 650 million for domestic flight and over 300 million for international flight. In 2020, experienced severe drop for domestic flights over 60% and international flight for over 75%. However, it shows quick and strong recovery. So in 2 years, the domestic flights increased by 85% and international flights increased over 100%. However, this shows that the demand is more volatile than the capacity of the airline. Next, we are going to introduce the load factor, which is a metric that measures the efficiency of airline operation. So we can see that the efficiency is pretty stable. It's about over 80 for most of the time. It peaked in 2019, about 85 point for load factor. However, it drops significantly during the COVID. However, it recovered really fast. In 2 years, it recovered back to 84, which is only 1 point less than the historical best load factor in the history. So we can see that the airline still operate efficiently after the COVID.
Flights were running effectively. Uh, but starting uh, but starting in March 2020, everything changed. The passenger numbers dropped a lot, and the planes were less than 20%. And they were almost empty in 2021. Air travels started coming back by mid 2020. 2022, passenger numbers were close to 2019 levels again. Uh, Load factors also went up. Airlines uh, improved by March, matching the number of flights to the number of travelers. Next, let's look at the domestic and international travels to see how COVID affected them differently. The domestic market come back faster by 2022. People wanted to travel within the country, and looser rules helped. But international travel was hit harder and look longer to recover. By the second half and 2022, both markets were back to 2019 levels. Now let's look at how airlines run their flights. This chart shows how many passengers were on each flight before COVID-19. Both domestic and international flights had steady numbers of passenger per flights. During COVID-19, flights had fewer people on board. The international flights were hit runs than domestic ones. After COVID-19, both types of flights carried more people. By mid 2023, flights in both markets had more passengers per flights than before COVID-19. Airlines became more efficient by using bigger planes and combining routes.
From former analysis, we know that airlines operate more effectively than before in year 2023. Now let's focus on year 2023. Here's a visualization of monthly passenger composition during year 2023. The distribution shows the seasonal feature of air traffic. There are more passengers during summertime than winter months. Also, domestic carried 17 to 18% of passenger year-round, peaking at 75 million in July. This constants based on infrastructure operations. Furthermore, if we compare the performance of July and August, we can see that there flight passenger mismatch. Although there are more flights in August than that in July, the number of passengers was lower in August. Sometimes here passenger volume does not mean here revenue. Let's see how the revenue performed. Here's a scatter plot showing the supply and the revenue of each month in year 2023. This scatter can vary faded by a straight line. There are no outliers. Also, capacities were translated to revenue effectively. This indicated airlines' capability to quickly respond to market changes. So thank you. This is our presentation. Bye.